This is obviously going to be big news here in the U.S. when Animoca goes live, because it will be, I feel like, one of the true first Web3 native companies to go on the stock exchange. So that in itself, I think, is going to be rewarded by typical Wall Street investors that understand where this space is going. And there's a lot of them they're coming on our show. They're starting to understand where this is going. So I anticipate you're going to see some big movement for sure. Where do you guys have the most exposure? Is it China or Japan right now?
So we don't have any, as Animoca, I mean, between those two countries is definitely Japan, but generally Asia Pacific. So to be clear, we don't have exposure to China directly because China doesn't have anything in crypto per se, but Hong Kong and Taiwan are markets where crypto is sort of, obviously permitted, and we have a lot of exposure there. And of course, the other thing is that the whole region, Asia Pacific, is actually, our biggest region overall. Which also adds to the other element that Animoca Brands, is not just sort of, giving you exposure to altcoins, which of course is, a big area. It's 30% of the market, right? But it's also gives you exposure to the Asia potential, which no public company currently services as well, right?
There is a token infrastructure running in the back that's paying the bills. I mean, just think about if you're an AI user today, how you're paying it. You're paying it in tokens. What are tokens? They're essentially abstractions of compute and energy, right? And that's basically what you're paying for. And so those economies are going to come available as a kind of AI commodity, and you can trade on that. And if the demand is high for the AI agent, right, for the AI service, then the token will have value in the same way that commodities products have value. If you have chip demand, if you have gold demand for jewelry, for instance, or whatever that may be, those commodities will increase in value as well.
I met him at an internet startup meetup in 1998. So my name is Robby. I'm the CEO of Investments, and I oversee our investing activity. As you know, we have sort of three pillars of the business. We make games for business, we make investments, and we have services. And so the investments piece is the one that I focus on, and that's where we make investments both strategically off the balance sheets as well as through our venture fund, Animoca Ventures, and our private equity fund, Animoca Capital. And we make investments across the Web3 ecosystem, so not just in games business, but also in infrastructure and DeFi and art and all kinds of different things across Web3, because mainly it's our belief as a company that tokens are kind of the incarnation of network effects. And so the best way to attract those network effects is to invest broadly across the ecosystem.
Has Animoca Brands always been in Web3?
No. So we actually started out as a mobile free-to-play game company back in 2009. So we made games. That was just after the launch of the App Store on iOS. And then later, the Google Play Store launched, I want to say 2011, 2012. And we made mobile free-to-play games, mostly casual games. And as you can tell from the name of the business, we focused on brands. So we focused on creating games leveraging third-party IP. So we would license original IP from brands you all know, everything from Hello Kitty to Doraemon and, et cetera, Astro Boy, Ultraman. And we would make original games featuring those IPs.
So what excites you the most about Web3 games?
What excites me the most? I think, to be honest, it's the same thing that's always excited me. When we started out in this field, the thing that we found most interesting was this intersection of blockchain and games is all about digital ownership. And the idea that, we made games for years, and we always promised to consumers that they owned the stuff that we sold them in games. They would spend virtual currency, they would buy virtual items, but actually they didn't really own it. They were only renting it because those economies we made in those games were not real. And so when we discovered blockchain, that's why we thought that this was a really exciting moment, because it was actually an opportunity for us to deliver on that promise. We could give them true digital ownership of their stuff because it was permanently, existent on the blockchain. And so this was a chance for us to really fulfill that promise. So to be honest, it sounds old because it's a 6-year-old idea, but it's still what excites me, because it's this idea of delivering digital property rights to gamers, which I think, if you think about the fact that gamers spend $100 billion a year buying virtual stuff in games that they don't really own, imagine if we can actually skins, land, avatars, swords, everything. Like, if we can actually give them that stuff and give them real ownership of that stuff, that's tremendous.
Hello, everyone. We have a recent Zebec Bombshell discovery. Why Yat Siu of Animoca Brands mentioned Payroll at the WEF Economic Forum. Okay, so consider smashing that like. This is big because sometimes these guys will tell you subliminal messages and they do hold weight. We're going to get really, really deep into this, and I'm telling you flat out, this guy is a big deal, and Animoca Brands is definitely a big deal. And some people were asking, like, I don't know, seems kind of speculative. We have all receipts in this one. So again, consider smashing like. All right, so what do we have? Let's start off, believe it or not, with my clipping. Yes, my clipping, believe it or not. I've been sharing on X. Some people just didn't give a crap, and that's okay. You might want to give it, you know what. I have this, and I think it kind of speaks for itself. It says, Yat Siu of Animoca Brands speaks from the WEF. You basically need it, and it needs to be, in a second, because why do you have payroll, blah, blah, blah. Listen to this, 21 seconds. We'll play a little bit more from the findings and get our panel discussion. Here we go.
You need it there in the second, because why do we have payroll systems that pay us on a monthly basis? We think that's normal because we've got credit systems around, but in those places, you need to have your payroll on a daily basis.
All right, as we would say, pause. What you see right here, Zebec, is redefining payroll for the 21st century. For the first time, employees can be paid instantly by the second. Does this not add up? Now, of course it does. Now, before we kick it over to the panel, check this out from Citibank. As we know, Citibank basically were the host of the Regulated Liability Network and, of course, the RSN. We've been covering a lot when it comes to the correlation of Canton and how Canton and Zebec can obviously benefit each other. All right, so is this recent? Well, if anything, check this out. It's a piece that highlights specifically people like Yat Siu, and it says the struggle for digital property rights by who? Yat Siu and Robby Young. And what's important here is this. It says here in the findings from both of them that basically overnight, Animoca went from being one of the world's leading mobile game developers to losing its sole sales outlet. While revenues had dropped to zero, Yat had 150 people on the payroll. So if anything, he realizes that there's platforms that have weight when it comes to specifically, like, as I put out, on-demand payroll. So look at this. The company managed to survive via a combination of finding another, albeit much smaller outlet, generating revenue by ad sales rather than in-app purchases, and selling off apps to competitors. What's coming out, obviously, here soon, that everybody's excited, is the Super App. So a tad bit more about this. You see here, does he mention anything about decentralized finance? They say, basically, yeah, they do. They recognize that central to this alternative vision for the internet are blockchain and decentralized finance. Last I checked, Zebec is really specializing in decentralized finance. I find the findings to be profound, but we will confirm it with real receipts from two key companies, which is Forge Global, and also we'll confirm some things from PitchBook in regard to the specific investors. But before we get into that, whoever wants to take it away first in regard to the intro so far, Animoca, again, the terminology, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, Animoca Brands, I really like Animoca Brands. Shout out to a brother in the space under our research channel. Yat Siu was in his billionaire blueprint, and that billionaire blueprint was in reference to Swift blockchain. So Yat Siu is an investor, and Animoca Brands is an investor in Swift blockchain and Metapath. And as I've told you guys before, Swift blockchain and via Metapath share an investor with Zebec with Shima Capital. So there's a lot of connections there between the two companies. And Yat Siu seems to, he definitely seems to know what he's doing. And look at him there at the rubbing shoulders with the people at the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, and to kind of highlight the importance of Animoca Brands in this crypto Web3 space, guys. I mean, you've got strategic partnerships and collaborations with the likes of Sandbox, Mocha Network, Binance, Futureverse, Hashkey Exchange, just to name Everest Ventures Group. And then you can also look at notable crypto companies. I mean, their portfolio is massive. Axie Infinity, Polygon, Dapper Labs, OpenSea, right? Consensus. Again, it's just Fireblocks. It goes on and on. Harmony, Yield Gaming. A lot in the Web3 gaming narrative as well. Over 600 plus companies in their portfolio, guys. They're a big deal in the Web3 and crypto space for sure.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. It was actually in some of my notes. But nonetheless, I do want to share some of the notes in regard to this because I want you guys to kind of see it firsthand other than just us stating it. So let's share a little bit about this. So for one, some people are going to ask the potential benefits to Animoca Brands, right? Not so much like the whole thing, specifically just Zebec. So we see here, even from the notes, as an investor, Animoca gains the Zebec's ecosystem, including token value appreciation, revenue linked buybacks. I like how it mentions specifically here, like again, what Rob just mentioned in regard to 600 companies, et cetera, et cetera. Real-time rewards in gaming, streaming payments enable instant per-second player earnings and play-to-earn models. Now, I get it. You point out Sandbox and some of these other ones. All right, I'm going to come back in the frame about this one. My end goal when it comes to crypto is to be able to create 2, possibly 3 video games, and I'm really going to do that. I did not get into all this just because I want to make maybe an extra 10K or 20K, and nothing against some people where that's your plan. But when I see the terminology about specifically speaking real-time payments by the second, well, guess what? Zebec does stand out above all when it comes to that. If I'm going to be playing a first-person shooter game and I'm having a real competition, a real tournament against maybe like a rival clan, because shout out to DPG, baby, right? We actually held some titles in the past, and it was awesome, right? We went 100 wins and 40 defeats, but we had 20 straight ladder #1 positions. And guess what? One of the things we all talked about was how cool would it be in real time to get paid for some of this stuff? And believe it or not, if I'm going to be competing with people and I'm going to be taking a Car 98K and plinking people across the map with my, whatever game I be promoting in the future or basically making, I want the functionality, which is boom, instantaneous verification of registering some of these hits, where's in the head or where's in the chest or whatever in these games. And people will flock to the games that have these core fundamentals built in and so on. And not only that, again, the future is going to be an anti-cheat system where basically you can verify on a public verifiable immutable ledger who are the bad actors, the hackers, if you will, like somebody's cheating at the game. Man, that's going to be a thing of the past. And shouldn't we want that? Of course. So again, I want to point out some of those things. What I want to do now is I want to share with you guys some of our great findings with their research. So we point out PitchBook, and we point out another one, which is basically Forge Global. I've always had the policy that I like to have at least 2 sources. So let's get into 2 sources. First thing we're going to do is pull up basically Forge Global. What does it read on there? Well, we see in the findings, and I was so excited, guys. Let me come back. I wanted you guys to see how excited I was. Rue, did I not take pictures, right? I sent you pictures, my friend. I was like, oh my gosh, look at this, bro. Yeah, I was so excited. I was like, man, this is going from speculation to confirmation, guys. So we really hope you guys appreciate the finding, especially if you're a Zebec holder or you're thinking about getting into Zebec. Again, think about this. These guys talking code sometimes, it's like, shout out to our brother in space, Channing. He always would say, how do you say quant without saying quant? Literally, Yat Siu is saying, how do you say Zebec without saying Zebec at Ziva, the economic form, right? Well, watch this. Boom, as I point out, boil it, mash it, stick it in a stew. We see forgeglobal.com, literally /Zebec _IPO. Major investors. You have 500 Global. You have AGS Ventures, Becco, Animoca Ventures. All right, so that's one citation, right? Here's another one. We see here specifically speaking. This is straight from who? This is the Zebec Network overview from PitchBook, Morningstar Company. I'll try to blow this up a little bit more for you guys can see it a little bit better, especially if you're watching on your TV or your phones. We all appreciate you guys whatever platform you're watching on, right? All right, so that should be more than big enough. And then we see here, Zebec Network investors, 41 of them, at least at that time. And again, Animoca Ventures, corporate venture capital. It's a minority, but that's very, very important. And before we jump into an exclusive interview that you will see that was from 6 days ago with Yat Siu, we're going to jump back to our panel. Guys, this solidifies it, even without connecting more key things with new updates from Animoca, with new updates from Yat Siu and so on. I am blown away with this because guess what? While everybody was highlighting all their use cases at the World Economic Forum, it's the subliminal message, the hold, wait, payroll by the second. Zebec has that. They do take the cake with that. Yes, there's going to be competitors in the future, but right now, it seems as though that they are there with the biggest players on the biggest stages. Go for it.
Yeah, and like I talked about before, is that they don't have, like you said, they might have competition in the future, but it's going to take a long time for any company to get to the point that they can compete with Zebec when it comes to the payment rails. I mean, they're already launching their super app on February 25th. It's like 9 days from now. And that's when that's really going to kick in heavy as well. Rue and I, we talked on one of his lives. I had speculated that they were dropping the desktop app version of it first, probably because it's easier to onboard companies to the Streamroll, rails, Stream Payroll rails, through desktop. Because how many companies do you know that are going to operate their payment systems on a cell phone app? Right? None, obviously. Right? Their administration offices are going to be using desktop apps. So I feel like that is a strategic launch of the desktop first. And again, as far as competitors, we've talked about this before. All of the regulation clearance that they have. I mean, they bought the company that regulation company. I can't remember what the company's called off the top of my head, but ensuring that they can get into any jurisdiction. MiCA, ISO 20022, so on and so forth. It's going to take a long time for any company to come along and directly compete with them. You talk about first movers advantage. They have a monstrous first movers advantage, in my opinion. No different than XRP had. They were stifled a little bit by the lawsuit, but I digress. When they first came out, XRP and Ripple, cross-border payments, didn't have a lot of competition back then. I look at Zebec the same way. There's not a lot of competition out there. It's going to take a long time for someone to compete with them.
Man, beautifully said. I mean, I feel the same way with that. Ryu, definitely want to get some of your thoughts in regard to everything, especially with what Rob just mentioned.
Yeah, and that regulation company they bought is Gate Knox. That my brother Rob was looking up for there. They're building that in, and one of the things Simon said about that was that if you don't have KYC and KML or AML built in, you're going to be at an extreme disadvantage if you want to do payroll and payment in the future. So looking at this, right, one of the things I always tell my guys, okay, before anything else comes online, they're going to have to get payroll and payments solidified, because if you don't have that infrastructure built, what are you going to do? You can't pay anybody properly. You can't have the velocity of payroll and payments move. And if you look at Animoca Brands, and like I think it was Max said, they are partnered with Sandbox and others. Well, here we go with Metaverse. Now you can actually have people in the Metaverse get paid by agentic AI, or maybe even kick off some agentic AI in the Metaverse, or like the possibilities are endless there. And what you can do with payment and payroll inside of a completely new Metaverse, right? Also conceivably, it really doesn't matter whether you're sending an tokenized NFT of a putty penguin, or you're tokenizing gold and sending it. The concept is the same, like kind of programmatically. So all of the stuff that Animoca Brands is doing as far as like Metaverse and gaming is concerned, you could take that same type of technology and use it towards something that's more concrete, like gold, or commodities, or sports tickets, or something of that nature. Some points or rewards that are given on like how they do credit cards, but now you're doing it for like stablecoin in place of yield. So yeah.
Great examples, you guys. What we're going to do now is jump over to this exclusive interview. Now, a disclaimer: you're more than welcome, of course, to watch the whole thing. It's it's an hour and 41 minutes. I will give a shout out to Dennis Guarda. He's the one who hosted this. But nonetheless, let's jump over to this, because basically, in a nutshell, it's referred to as Yat Siu. Yes, Yat Siu of Animoca Brands reveals the journey of Animoca Brands, AI, and the future of gaming. Okay. Again, this was just 6 days ago. Okay. And again, just in case if you're still new to it, Yat Siu is a technology entrepreneur, investor, multi-billionaire. I believe he's worth over $2 billion. Okay. So he is a big deal. And he's a policy advisor with nearly 30 years of experience in internet technology. This is why guys like him get invited over to the World Economic Forum. I'm not a big fan of the WEF, but I mean, they always invite everybody to them. Ripple, Stellar, you name it, right? Again, experience in digital media, gaming, and more importantly, what? Blockchain. So let's pull that up for you guys. Let's see what this is all about. And as we get to it, let's fast forward to this key area. I got it on the screen. 1 hour and 15-minute mark. This area is specifically focused on the Web3 economy and regulation. I want you guys to put a lot of focus on those two things because we are hoping and dreaming that 2026 is the year, right? Absolutely. So let's go ahead and full screen this, and we'll be back here in just a moment for some more discussion. Here we go.
Our general lens is that all economies, first of all, the general lens we see is that basically all economies are basically going to tokenize in one form or the other. So, the motto that we sort of like to say internally is tokenize or die. And the reason why is because when you tokenize anything, you give it a superpower, which is essentially it helps construct a network effect on whatever asset or community base that you're putting together. It enumerates the network value in a way that people weren't able to sort of measure before. But there is value, right? You're investing in Facebook because they own a network. But that doesn't give you a qualification as to what is the value of the network itself. You're only measuring the profits that Facebook is able to generate from that value and the ideas that can generate from that, right? So it's still a derivative effect. There's no way for us to truly ascertain the value of the network itself, except through, you can do models and analysis, but the users themselves haven't given a marketplace effect for it, right? They haven't sort of said, this is what it's worth, right? And by tokenizing it, you do that. And when I say about network effects, I don't necessarily mean that network effects are only things that have to accrue in value as an asset appreciation. One of the powers of network effect is reach and distribution, right? So the asset, like a stable coin, won't necessarily go up in value because it's a stable coin. But because it's tokenized, someone in Africa, South America, India, Southeast Asia can now have a US dollar. And so think about that. So now the US dollar, ironically, even though it's more used and more distributed around the world, doesn't make it more valuable because the US government will keep printing. But ultimately, it actually has become much more influential and much more powerful because now someone in Africa who wouldn't normally be able to buy dollars now has a dollar, which means that he can spend it in a dollar economy. And which means, of course, that he can avail himself to services that accept the asset because it's dollar-based, such as staking or yield or investment, right, in a global scale that he wasn't able to do before, right? So I don't see them as distinctly different things. I don't see them as a separation. I see them as heavily integrated applications and heavily connected services where everything is going to tokenize. And, if you remember back in the day, people used to distinguish you as a .com or internet company. And today, everything is internet and everything is .com, right? Nobody distinguishes between the two. And in the future, we're not going to distinguish between a company that has tokens and doesn't have tokens because every company and every individual is somehow going to be involved in tokens if they're not tokenizing itself. Because the competitor that is tokenizing before you will probably be better at their business than you because they have tools and services and applications and opportunities that are greater than what you have. And that's basically why, the companies who went online first, who went on social media first, who are using TikTok first, who are using AI first, right? They're the ones who are going to succeed, right? And tokens is definitely a part of that. And the final point I would say about tokenization as well is that tokens is the asset class of AI. And it's actually the way in which you can trade permissionless assets in a trusted, decentralized, scalable manner, which basically means that essentially, if you believe that we're all going to be using AI agents and they're going to be owning and doing stuff, with our, whether it's crypto, whether it's, stable coins or actual assets in itself, then that basically means that essentially, if you don't tokenize your product or service or asset, then you become invisible to AI, right? Which means you don't have a market that you lose a market that you could normally address.
All right, you guys, there's a lot that was mentioned there. I'm going to give you my quick little thought about it. So in that clipping that we got into, Yat Siu specifically mentioned, I would say 2-3 times, he said like super value. He pointed out he hasn't given the whole thing of a marketplace value yet. Well, think about what ZBCN is doing. In reality, they're not hitting two birds with one stone. They're hitting all the birds with all the stones. So I really thought it was very valuable to share this with you guys. Again, just 6 days ago, he's talking about some of this stuff. Again, think about it. He's being interviewed on some of these other platforms. He just got back, obviously, from the World Economic Forum, and he's right back into the whole thing, discussing a Web3 economy, and more importantly, where we move forward with regulations. Rob, Rue, whoever wants to take it.
Never mind stones. The guy's using buckshots and just hitting everything, in my opinion. But absolutely, there's a lot there that I really liked. And the tokenize or die aspect of it, if you're not tokenized, again, like he said, AI is just you're not even going to be recognizable. You're basically completely bowing out of competition moving forward in the future. And it's something I talk a lot about And if you're over in our VIP community on the Patreon, you know I say all the time, you are front running the next 10 to 20 years of innovation right now. You are looking at it. And a lot of people are too emotional when it comes to it, and they're going to look back with a lot of regrets. An early presence as well, like he went back to the .com ages and stuff like that, ages, not late 90s, whatever. The early companies who had an early presence and a foothold are the ones that are going to succeed in these spaces because they're getting the adoption faster. They're the first movers advantage, right? And to touch on the US dollar, same thing. A word he didn't use was more accessible to the rest of the world as well, which is going to be very, very important, right? And yeah, just again, guys, I can't stress it enough. Front running the next 10 to 20 years of innovation. It's right in front of your face. It's yours. You can either reach for it or not.
Rob, I love so much the notes you're taking. You take fantastic notes, my friend. Kudos to you on that one. I love this panel we got. Guys, come on. Consider smashing the like. Consider subscribing. We hope we can earn it. Our mission is to provide real value, but real obviously want to get some intake from you. I know you're chiming in on a bit on this one. I know you've been excited about us doing this outline. We're finally here. Your thoughts?
Man, he said so much. So let's start with the whole tokenization of the dollar and allowing someone in Africa to be able to spend dollars. So one of the things, shout out to Jesse of Apex Crypto Insights, like how he said, well, they wouldn't have given us XRP unless they needed us. So this is giving liquidity to the dollar. Like before, where a person in Africa could not access dollars at all. And believe me, like accessing dollars in a land like Africa or a couple other lands like the Philippines and, certain Latin America countries and others, the dollar goes so much further in these lands than it does in America, right? So this is giving more liquidity to the dollar. This reminds me of something, shout out to Creative Control, that he posted of David Sachs, who's also the crypto czar, but also an investor in Zebec with his craft ventures, right? Where he said, this is going to fix, I'm going to paraphrase, it's going to fix the archaic payment system, and it's going to give way more liquidity to the US dollar via the digital dollar. And this is absolutely right. And the next thing he said that is very, very profound, can't miss it. Rob touched on it in that he said, okay, well, we're on the next, we're on the cutting edge of technology. Okay, let's not believe this AI bubble. He said that tokenization is the asset class of AI. Like that's so profound, right? Where this agentic AI, we're kind of really on the cusp of it being developed. And shout out to Max. And I brought up a couple shows on X402 where and me and Max did some collaborations on it, where Coinbase is creating this kind of protocol in which agentic AI are using this X402 to be able to kind of do payments, right? This is going to be so much bigger than we even think. I had a post, we don't have to bring it up, but it's from Coinbase developers where they have agentic AI wallets now. And they say, go ahead and fund this and fund your agentic AI so they can make payments and things on your behalf and things like that. So if Yat Siu's talking about this, there must be, from his level, Animoca Brands, from the, World Economic Forum level, a big need and necessity for these agentic AI to make payments. Again, one of the examples I've used is carbon credits. I know people don't necessarily like that example, but it's going to be big coming up, definitely when you think about these data centers and all the power they take. So counting carbon is going to be even more important in the future. But now imagine somebody like in a virtual world needing to pay for things, but also imagine a company that does daily transactions and they just now hand this over to the agentic AI and it can do it light speeds faster, more efficient, and with instant finality than a human being could. So this is going to be fantastic, and it's good to know that Zebec is going to be a part of this.
Indeed. The last part that we're going to get into will tie in everything. Because for one, while we highlighted a lot of Yat Siu of Animoca Brands, it was the other key participants. So for one, why did we put in so much emphasis on Yat Siu and his mentions of specifically stablecoins? Would you like the answer? Of course you would. We're going to take you over to where I clipped the original video from the World Economic Forum. So check it out. We're going to share this on the screen. We heard Yat Siu's comments. What about immediately after? Who was there present? Well, believe it or not, it was Jeremy Allaire of Circle. Listen to this, because if it doesn't make sense, then you can always watch it again. Let's blow this up, and if anything, listen closely. We'll have our panel wrap up their thoughts in regard to it all. And again, this was not that long ago, last month in January. Here we go.
Yeah, so what's your sense of both the immediate potential, the short-term potential of the growth in stablecoin and ultimate potential? I mean, where does this go?
I mean, I guess I'll take it from the lens from the entirely virtual economy, which is kind of where we're sitting, between video games and digital assets purely. I mean, the state of crypto broadly went from, like 6-7 years ago to, about 3 to 400 billion to basically 3 trillion. And so that's very much a proxy as well. As those economies grow in themselves, not just the rise of Bitcoin, but the entire crypto economy, of course, the use of stablecoins grow as well. And I think the very initial use of stablecoins was this on-off ramp as well. It was kind of really, if you think about it, the bridge to the real world, not just as an RWA, but literally, I have assets that are worth something in the digital world that are entirely virtual, so to speak. And now how do I bridge it to I can, buy something in the real world and do that? And that actually, stablecoins really sort of perfected that model at the start. And was also,
and I'm right, that has up to now been quite a significant component of the stablecoin.
It certainly has been a significant component for the initial growth, but I think it's much more significant today because the other thing that's also happened, and especially during COVID, we saw this in places with some of our products, in places like Philippines and Indonesia, there was basically mass adoption of places where they needed to make virtual income. And virtual income can be made through activities that are done in those digital worlds, right? They used to call it the metaverse. Metaverse is kind of out, but the point is that people are still making money in those environments. They make them in these digital assets, in crypto tokens. They may be, not real. However, they would then trade them out into stablecoins. And then next thing you know, because they have a wallet, they've got a bank account of some form where they wouldn't normally get banked because, $5 isn't worth a bank account, but $5 is a lot of money in places like the Philippines. And then what's interesting also is this financial inclusion that actually introduces a form of financial literacy. And I think it's interesting because, for those of us who've been around for a while, I think it's a little bit synonymous of looking at media consumption in the internet back in 1995 and 96, right? The growth is rapid, but in relative media consumption compared to TV and newspapers, it seems very low. And I think with stablecoins and broadly with digital assets, we're kind of at that stage, right? $3 trillion is a big figure, but at the size of the stock market and generally speaking, it's still a tiny, tiny fraction, which I think represents that opportunity. The other thing, of course, is that we think of this also as the asset class of the youth. So it's not just developing, it's also for young people. We look at South Korea, the majority of people under the age of 30 now exclusively deal in digital assets of some form or fashion. Sometimes they don't even care about stocks, which is why people talk about tokenizing stocks themselves. And so what is that bridge, right? So I think the growth of stablecoins is going to grow not just because of the demand in the physical world, better, faster, cheaper, all the arguments that we're seeing here. Just on the topic of unbanked, I mean, we're used to T+2, sometimes T+7, depending what it is. But in places of these countries, you need, you need it there in the second, because why do we have payroll systems that pay us on a monthly basis? We think that's normal because we've got credit systems around, but in those places, you need to have your payroll on a daily basis, and stablecoins is one of the best use cases for that. So it's growing from there.
Jeremy, we're all obviously now completely used to the idea that artificial intelligence, is not only the adoption of artificial intelligence is not only now pretty well universal, but we're expecting obviously the dramatic acceleration of it in a increasingly short kind of time frame. Can you tell us how stablecoin, what role stablecoin play there, and how AI will affect stablecoin?
Sure. I'd start with maybe some basics, which is when we got started working on this almost 13 years ago, the idea that got us very excited was that first that you could have kind of money as like a native data type on the internet. So you could have digital dollars, just like you have digital music or communications, like kind of basic building blocks, and that it would be programmable. And the programmability idea was through the advent or the proposal of the idea of smart contracts. And 12 years ago, 13 years ago, that wasn't a thing. Now we have very mature computing networks, these blockchain networks that are able to execute code. And what's powerful about it is that these smart contracts are they're publicly verifiable. So that's really important when you're dealing with transactions amongst unknown counterparties, or, for example, when you're dealing with transactions between an AI agent and another AI agent. And so we now have kind of the computing material to provide a kind of assured, verifiable, cryptographically verifiable way to conduct transactions. And so that's powerful in a whole bunch of things. It's powerful for bringing more financial market infrastructure online and innovations in the way financial services get built and delivered and rendered. But it's particularly important in this growing world of agentic economic activity. And so, right now what we're seeing is this proliferation in new technology standards for basically payment protocols for AI agents and payment protocols for AI agents that primarily use stablecoins as the actual medium of exchange. If you think about AI agents that are making these high velocity transactions at very low cost to do work or consume data, et cetera, like taking out your Visa card or firing up a bank wire, or it's just completely absurd. And so we need a medium of exchange that can scale down to fractions of a cent, that has the money velocity and speed of the internet, that works openly, globally, interoperably, any software or hardware connected device in the world that may have AI agentic activity happening on it, being able to transact. And critically, with AI, one of the big concerns is truth, not just hallucinations, but also how do we know who is this AI agent acting on behalf of, and how do I verify that its output and its work is correct? And so what we're really seeing is sort of the next generation of blockchain networks, things like Arc, which Circle's building on, there's other new blockchain networks, are actually being designed specifically for agentic compute.
Okay, let's talk about this just a moment. I'm looking forward to you guys chiming in on this. So I paused it right there about Arc. You're going to see why here in a brief bit. Before we get into that, I want to give you guys some of my notes real quick. So when you guys saw that interview from 6 days ago, what did Yat Siu point out numerous times? He pointed out, for example, the whole thing of an emphasis on AI. And what we saw there was Jeremy Allaire being asked about AI and stablecoins. That's profound, is it not? But before Jeremy Allaire was asked those questions, you saw from Yat Siu the asset class of the youth. Zebec with the science card, the universities, makes so much sense here. Again, think about that. All right, now we did pause it on the whole thing of Arc. Oh man, you guys are gonna love this. So let's pull this up as well and then get our closing comments from our panel. We see here, specifically from Zebec, they officially joined who? Circle's Arc testnet for the institutional grade network being explored by firms like Visa. You heard them specifically talk about Visa, State Street, Invesco, and MasterCard. Zebec was an early investment of Circle's. If anything, Animoca Brands was an early investor. Zebec is a member of the Circle Alliance. Again, think about all these people in this panel. That's an alliance, and continues to lead in developing payroll and payment rails within the USDC ecosystem, paving the way for broader institutional adoption. How long ago was this reported? Last November. To me, it has come all full circle with the research. This makes so much sense. We see all the connections, but by all means, whoever wants to take it first, I saw you guys take a lot of notes. Want to hear from you guys.
Well, I guess my final thoughts would be that, first of all, it's not a surprise with Circle being such an early investor and Animoca Brands being early investors into Zebec. I see this for some reason, people who don't like Zebec, they say, why would Coinbase, list Zebec? I mean, come on. But that aside, I mean, guys, when it comes to the stablecoins, we went from a time, which is what he was explaining, where stablecoins were essentially just a pivot place or a store, so to speak, of your fiat when it came to the ability to buy and sell your crypto in the early, and that was pretty much its only use case, right? You would utilize it as an on and off ramp to be able to buy crypto. Now we have moved into a place, guys, where we have such massive global adoption and use case, right? We're talking about streamroll payments, putting in the rails for payroll and stuff like that in USDC, being able to, I've touched on before, being able to, for example, hold your USDC stablecoin over on your Decent wallet and load your USDC Circle onto your Zebec Carbon card, completely eliminating banks altogether, literally being your own bank and being able to use that Carbon card anywhere that MasterCard is accepted via their partnership with MasterCard, right? And that's just like a quick patchwork to the future we're moving into, where you're not going to have to, take these multiple steps, but you can already completely eliminate banks altogether if you really wanted to. And again, another thing that I've touched on is, my grandchildren, your grandchildren are going to one day look at you and laugh and say, you used to have to wait 2 weeks to get paid? Like, are you kidding me right now? And the transparency on blockchain, at the end of the day, some people don't like it, but at the end of the day, listen, it does help eliminate illicit activity, right? So you got to have that transparency through your stable coins and stuff like that, despite what someone like Gary Gensler or Elizabeth Warren might say about it.
I like what you mentioned there in regard to like truth and trust. And again, right at the World Economic Forum, you heard whether it was Jeremy Allaire or Yat Siu and some of the other people on the panel, whether they put a lot of emphasis on truth and trust. So this all makes sense. Rue, your thoughts?
They just confirmed everything I said to talk before, like this agentic AI. So it's like not only are we're heading to a place where getting paid every 2 weeks is a thing of the past, and streaming payroll is going to be the future. Well, maybe even the agentic AI is taking care of all payments, all different payments, and there's no human in the loop at all. Period. The agentic AI is set up by the company to pay whoever by the second, and this is where we're headed. Jeremy Allaire was talking about it and how he's doing it and how they're getting ready to do it with ARC. There's also Tempo, another private permission network by Stripe that is set up that Zebec is connected with the All Unity stablecoin. And Yat Siu was also mentioning agentic AI in reference to the metaverse. So he brought that up too as well. And that's the exact same thing that I mentioned in the first talk, saying that, hey, agentic AI is going to make metaverse possible as well. When you listen to what some of the things that Yat Siu was saying there, it's a little bit hard to imagine as an American because for a Filipino person, like $5 American is a lot of money. In America, you can barely buy anything with that. But I remember it might have been a couple years ago, might not be true right now. But I remember looking up that the average salary in American for a Filipino person was like $280, something like that a month. And that's why things like Axie Infinity took off over there and different things like that. So imagine now they put a agentic AI to work for them, and that agentic AI makes $5 a day. I mean, that may be pretty good for someone in the Philippines, right? So hence, maybe these agentic AI replace some of the jobs that are lost from via AI taking them from people. And now people in certain countries that can take advantage of the American dollar, now they can use agentic AI to survive. So yeah, I think we're don't sleep on agentic AI, and Zebec seems like they're in the driver's seat up with it for payroll with companies.
Yeah, my uncle is a pastor in Portland, Oregon, and also he has a church in the Philippines. And he mentioned to me, I think last time I saw him, which was about a year ago, the exchange ratio from US dollars to Filipino pesos is basically like a 50-to-1 ratio. So yes, the dollar goes super far over there. Guys, I think this was a solid outline. Really got into this deep. Sometimes we go deeper, guys, when it comes to this stuff. Sometimes you can just get a quick update and so on, but that's what we do. We want to provide value from all three of us. Hey, do us a solid if you listen to the entire outline and type in this key word into the comments, and that is agentic. It lets us know who's paying attention and who isn't. Really appreciate you guys taking the leap over to our new channel. Of course, we still have our individual channels. Check out our Patreons. We drop exclusive info, top tier info over there. We have early calls on all three of our platforms. So come join our VIP communities, and we'd be more than glad to have you. We won't keep you any bit further. May the Lord bless you all. We'll see you guys on the next video. Over now.
God bless.
Peace.